Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We are going to start our class today, and our class today, inshallah, is going to be about the factors of emergence of the Romantic period or the Romantic theory. Why are we going to shed light on this phase? It is because it affected the beliefs of Romanticism. I mean that we are not studying the factors of emergence of Romanticism for historical background, no, but because to emphasize that these factors, they affected the principles of Romanticism itself, right? To the extent that it became part of their own beliefs, So what do we mean by factors of emergence? It means that it is the factors that helped in the appearance of the Romantic theory. We have many, right, factors, but these are the three most important ones that helped, right, in the emergence of the theory, right, and shaping the beliefs of the theory itself. So the first one, we call it Oriental Mysticism. And what do we mean by Oriental Mysticism here? It refers to, Fatima? All right. It refers to Sufism in the East, right, or the Middle East. This is what we mean by Oriental Mysticism. Mysticism here means Sufism, How come, right, this type of of belief affected the Romantics? The Romantics appreciated the philosophy of the Sufis because it appealed to their mind and their own feelings. What I mean by that Sufis believed in rejecting the city life and going to the bosom of nature in order to what? To practice their own meditation and imagination, right? They like the simplicity of life, and they believed that they can come to a unity with cosmos, right? Especially Ibn Arabi, right? He, brought a new theory, right, which indicates that, right, that a human being can come to a kind of unity with God, right? And of course, right, many people, they disagree with this. Actually, most Muslim scholars, they disagree with this, right? But this is not our main concern here, right? That the Romantics, they believed in the same idea, that a human being can come to a complete harmony and unity with what? With nature, not God, with nature, right? Because we are the products of nature, first of all. This is what they believe, that we are supposed to be like any other tree, like a drop of water, like, right, a cloud in the sky, like an animal in the, right, on the mountains. And we can come to that unity in order to be as natural as possible. So the Oriental Mysticism, it affected the philosophy of the Romantics, right, in their own belief that, right, they should leave the city life and they have to go to the bosom of nature, in order to practice the imagination, right, the power of imagination that might lead them to a kind of unity with nature, with the world, with cosmos. So this type, right, of philosophical, right, beliefs, right, affected their own, right, principles. The French Revolution too was one of the basic principles that affected the beliefs of Romanticism. In what sense? That the French Revolution, yes, sister? Fraternity.
And they try to, in writing literature and in their political law.
Good. Right. So that the three principles of the French Revolution, right? They were appealing not only for the Romantics but actually for everyone, right? When you find someone who is calling for for liberty, right, equality, and the fraternity, right? These are, to a certain extent, they are very romantic principles. What do we mean by very romantic principles, right? That in a sense that all human beings are brothers, all human beings are supposed to be free and live free, and all of human beings are equal. These are, right, they are appealing not only for the romantics, but for everyone, right? And therefore, right, the French Revolution, it affected these beliefs, right? And they wanted to change the literary tradition. In what sense? Because the literary tradition before, right, the Romanticism, it was about, as I told you, about the elite, right? For, right, the elite, and written by the elite, and no place for the common man, which means that there is no equality. There is no equality in showing, right, the problems of the human being, the issues, the interests, the concerns of the human beings, right? It is all about the upper class and the upper class only, which means that there is no equality and there is no fraternity, brotherhood in literature. So they wanted to reflect these three principles where? In literature, right?
So romantics believe in equality.
Yeah, I mean, in what sense? That what is supposed to be reflected in literature is not only the upper class, but it's supposed to reflect common people. Why? Because everyone is equal to everyone, right? And therefore, this is what is supposed to be reflected. What affected the principles much more, right, is the pre-romantic period, right? And what do we mean by the pre-romantic period here? We mean, yes, please.
The pre-romantic period, we mean the period before the romantic, but not in a long time, in a short time.
Yeah, I mean, within 20 to 30 years before Romanticism, before.
When they were preparing for the romanticism.
It is the period that preceded Romanticism, almost 20 years before Romanticism. And what is important about this? That, yes.
We have three,
Not only three, but many, right? All right. It is a period of what we call it, okay, intellectual quest. What do we mean by intellectual quest? That
we have Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who has a philosopher wrote a new theory called naturalism. It means by which the human being should going back to nature and live in nature. Also supposed to be an awful Sabbath, to be noble in his education and manner and intention and attitude, but to live as a nature as a Sabbath. Jean brought a new idea that dominated the literature of English in that time, which is the idea of new philosophy.
Thank you. All right, good. Well, but I'm saying that that period, it was a period of scientific discoveries, right? And psychological progress as well, right? Not only in science, but psychology and philosophy. Science, psychology, and philosophy. The three fields were going in parallel. And the people of that period, right, they wanted to know more. This is why we call it, it was a period of intellectual quest. They are looking for knowledge. They are hungry for knowledge. And right, their thirst was unquenched for knowing more, And in that period appeared many writers and many scientists, philosophers. But the three in particular affected, right, okay, the Romantic period in three different fields, right? Science and philosophy. The first one was Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he's a French, right, philosopher, naturalist, and right, he is a writer as well. He was the first one, right, who called for the principle of going back to nature. And what do we mean by going back to nature? That a human being should go back to his own pure nature, right? And if necessary, to leave, right, the complicated, right, life of the city and to go back to nature, right? And he invented, as our sister, what's your name, sister? As Fatima said, right, a new literary concept. It is called what? What is it called? The noble savage, right? What is the noble savage? Which is an idea that was liked by the Romantics. Noble, savage. Two contradictory words together. How can someone who is supposed to be noble and savage at the same time, right? Right? That, what does he mean by that? He means, yes.
Well, he is noble by origin. But
Who is he? It refers to man, human beings, right?
noble, maybe noble by origin, but he's savage.
Not only by origin, noble by their own education, by their own manners, by their own, right? That, yeah, noble by their own deeds, intentions, right? And at the same time,
They are savages because they're still living in the city life and they didn't discover the beauty of nature, maybe, or they do not appreciate nature.
not exactly, right? What I mean, to live as natural as a savage, right? It is to live as natural. It doesn't mean that you have to reject the city and to reject, no, not at all. To be noble in your manners, to be in your education, in anything that is possible in which you can be noble, right? Then, and to be not corrupt and futile at the same time, because you know, right, this civilization, it corrupts civilization, right? That our complicated life, it makes us complicated people, not easy to understand, not easy to understand people sometimes. Yeah, but to be as natural as an animal, to be noble, but as natural as an animal, right? Like a savage, to combine both. In other words, it is exactly like the idea of William Blake when he talked about the state of innocence, for example. He said that that state of innocence, it is not only related to children. Innocence, right? It is not only children, all right, a state that is related to what? To a certain age, which is childhood. No, it is a mental state. It is a mental state that can be found in maturity. Can be found, in other words, that we can be grown-ups, but at the same time we are innocent, right? That we are not corrupt by our what? By our own age, by our own education, by our own civilization, by our own laptops, by our own Facebook accounts. No, but to be as natural as possible, right? And this is exactly what, right, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, right, was requiring, right? To be noble in manners, in education, and everything, but to be as natural as possible at the same time, right? To be as natural as a savage, although I don't like the word, yeah. Right. Well, these ideas appealed to the Romantics, and I gave you example. One of these influences, it was actually the same ideas in the same pre-Romantic period, William Blake, who believed in the state of innocence and the state of experience. Experience, it refers to the state of corruption, right? Because of civilization, because of what? Because of age, because of life. And the state of innocence, it is being natural, although you are a grown-up, right? Well, also going back to nature, it appealed to the Romantics, and their appreciation of nature, it came from that belief of Rousseau's belief in naturalism. Then another person that affected their own principles, yes. Industrial Revolution started long before, right? I mean, okay, it started early in the 16th century. Yeah, but much more than the Industrial Revolution, we are talking about, right, the intellectual revolution, scientific revolution, philosophical revolution, which is marking that period, yes.
Yeah, I mean, men and women were like machines. They were dominated by reason, so they wanted to escape from the city or the life of city to the nature.
All right. All right. Sorry? Right. Yeah, we are not going to go to history. Do you understand what I mean? I am discussing the factors, the elements of Romanticism. Right? Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton is another character. I think everyone knows who Isaac Newton is. Right? Is there anyone who doesn't know who Isaac Newton is? في حد بيعرفش حاجة ابن نيوتن؟ في حد بيعرفوش؟ ايه؟ عانيتوا منه ها؟ And who told you that he didn't eat the apple? They lied on you. He ate the apple, sister. Right? But he thought after eating the apple. This is the question. Well, Isaac Newton is famous for what? Right? I mean, the rules of dynamics and statics. Right? Gravity. That everything to him, it was mechanical in nature. Mechanical in nature. Everything is measurable. Everything is measurable and can be determined according to a set of rules which are always correct, And therefore, he reflected a kind of a world which is a mechanical world. A mechanical world. This mechanical world, right, can be measured all the time and controlled by the rules of physics. The rules of physics. And it has no, right, a place for imagination, right? And therefore, you find that the Romantics, right, did not like the world of Isaac Newton. They responded negatively to the ideas of Isaac Newton because they did not see the world, right, as a mechanical in nature. On the contrary, they created worlds of their own, which are imaginative world that doesn't follow any kind of rules, right? That it is the rules, the world of liberty that can be created. It is a utopia of their own, which doesn't follow the rules of Isaac Newton, right? So the world which is a mechanical in nature, all right? In other words, we can say that Isaac Newton, right, portrayed the world as a mechanical world, and he created a God of his own, a mechanical God for this world, right? Which is not the belief of whom? The belief of Romantics, all right, who believed in something that cannot be controlled by the rules of Isaac Newton. Imagination, for example, right? How can you measure imagination according to the rules of Isaac Newton? Does it follow the rules of gravity, all right, or statics and mechanics? Of course not. And therefore, their response to the mechanical word of Isaac Newton, it strengthened their own beliefs in their imagination, in the power of imagination to create a world of their own, which is completely different from the world of Isaac Newton. So Isaac Newton worked as a stimulus for them to what? To respond negatively, right? Not positively, not to follow his own rules, but they stood against his own rules because it is not like the rules of the Romanticism that they believed in. Similarly, another philosopher, his name is John Locke. Sorry, yes. All right, yeah. What was his influence, John Locke? What was, how did he, support their own ideas? Or they reacted negatively as well, exactly as they did with Isaac Newton? Good, right? That a new philosophy of materialism. What is that? That the mind, our mind is static, passive. It's only a perceiver. It's only a perceiver for what can be received by the five senses. Just imagine that the world that really exists is the one that can be perceived by the five senses, right? I see this, I can touch it, I can smell it, so it exists, right? If I cannot touch it, if I cannot see it, if I cannot smell it, it doesn't exist, right? Sorry? Of course not.
So we cannot touch and see the God.
Right? This is what he believed. I said, a word of materialism, right? A philosophy of materialism, right? That, okay, he said that the basic function of the mind is only a perceiver, right? But it doesn't have a function of its own. Just imagine that we have a computer here, right? This computer, right? We have input devices. We have the mouse. We have the keyboard. We have the scanner, right? So what is the function of the computer, right? Is to receive what comes from the input devices, right? What comes from the keyboard, what comes from the mouse, but it doesn't have a function of its own, right? This wouldn't be acceptable to us because we understand that data is processed inside. We know that data is processed inside. The same thing with Romantics. They rejected this materialism of John Locke. And they believed that the basic function of the mind is imagination. Right? Without eyes we can see. We can see without eyes. We can, right? Okay, here we can touch, right? Without even using our own hands. Just imagine that you are sleeping, right? And you will be dreaming. While you are dreaming, you eat, you drink, you move, right? Okay, you see, you run, you find your legs, right, fixed in the ground, and you cannot run, right, sometimes, right? And you wake up while you are in your place. But you didn't use your mind, your eyes, your hands, right? You didn't use any five senses. But it is only the work of the mind, the work of the mind. So the mind is not passive. The mind is not passive for the Romantics. And they said, right, that the basic function of imagination and whatever perceived by the five senses, it will have only meaning if we have imagination. And if we don't have imagination, they are meaningless. They are meaningless, right? So they rejected, right, the idea of sensation. Of whom? Right? Of John Locke. And right, they never believed, right, in the existence of John Locke that depends basically on the five senses, right? Well, this, it helped in shaping their own principles. Something else which also added, right, to shaping their own, right, beliefs in the theory, their appreciation of what we call it the old times, right? They were fond of history, particularly the mythology, the time of the English mythology, back in the deep history, right? They appreciated what we call it the mystery of that time. And mystery here, right? Right, I'll make it easy for you, right? The old times in the English history are characterized by mysterious atmosphere that dominated by, right, legends like the legends of right, King Arthur, the legends of right, of knights going against dragons, against witches, magic, right? These things are, we call them, right, supernatural, mysterious objects, right? Things. And the Romantics, they appreciated that past. They appreciated that past, that they developed their, right, their own liking for the past and for the mystery of the past because it reflects what we call it, right, this mysterious atmosphere or the supernatural atmosphere. And therefore, their liking for the old times, it helped in forming what we call it, their belief in the supernatural, right? as exactly as they develop their love for nature, right? They like nature and they like the supernatural at the same time. So these are the factors that helped, right, in shaping, right, the beliefs of the Romantic period. Well, the first thing that we are going to start with, or the first item that we are going to discuss, right, in the theory of Romanticism is their definition of poetry, right? This definition, it was, right, mentioned in the preface to the Lyrical Ballads by William Wordsworth. So, right, what is this definition? Is there anyone who can memorize it? Well, it is here. A spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings recollected in tranquility. Who can help me in understand this sentence? Who can help me? Yes, please, Lama.
So a spontaneous means a feeling at the moment, happening right at the moment.
Something which is unplanned.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
All of a sudden, overflow of powerful feelings. So all these powerful feelings are coming like a river, like all at once. They are overflowing.
Right.
So and they're always collected in tranquility. So I guess in a moment of quietness or imagination or just meditation of the poets.
Right. Thank you. Someone else? Yes, please.
In case that poetry is a product of inspiration.
Oh,
So the poet reflects,
where is inspiration?
I mean, the poet reflects his own experience and feelings.
Well, yes, please.
Maybe it means that the more feelings that the poets have, it can help him to describe what is happening around him by a powerful strength.
Yeah. Well, I want you to look at what is the most important word in the whole sentence. What is the most important word?
Feelings.
This is the most important word. Right? Okay? Is that correct or not? Well, this feeling, what kind of feelings? It is supposed to be spontaneous. 1, 2. It is supposed to be overflow, and it is supposed to be. So originally, what is poetry? Poetry is
Feeling.
good. So what is the synonym here? We have one synonym, right? Poetry means feelings. But these feelings, they have 3 qualities. The first quality, that it is supposed to be spontaneous, unplanned.
Suddenly.
Not suddenly, unplanned. Unplanned feelings. We are not talking about the spontaneity of poetry. I'm talking about the spontaneity of feelings, because there is a big difference between, right, the spontaneity of poetry and the spontaneity of feelings. I will explain this when we come to the end, when we come to the end of the definition, right? Well, so what we can say, poetry is only feelings, right? But these feelings that they are supposed to be spontaneous, unplanned, natural, right? Not arranged, good, right? And overflow, excessive, right? What do we mean by excessive? Overflow, it is not just a little amount of feelings. No, something which makes you move, something which you feel chill, right? This is when you feel chill and moved, we can say that now you have an overflow of feelings, right? Okay? Flux, right? Flow, overflow, and not a normal feelings, not an overflow of normal feelings, but they are supposed to be, right, something that makes you laugh, something makes you cry, something makes you jump, and something makes you say hallelujah, hallelujah. Do you understand me? Something which is really strong, really strong. Good. This is poetry. So poetry is originally one word, feelings. But it has three qualities: spontaneous, overflow, and powerful. And powerful. This is the first half of the definition. The first half of the definition. Let's come to the second half. Right? That these feelings are supposed to be recollected in tranquility. Tranquility, it means a state of calmness, a state of peace of mind, in which the human being, right, is relaxing and having a state of peace of mind, right? Everything is cool, right? And then while he is living this state of calmness, of tranquility, right, he uses his own imagination to recollect. What's the meaning of recollect? To remember, right? To remember how he felt at the moment of the poetic experience. At the moment of the poetic experience. So here we say that poetry is not spontaneous, but it is recollected in tranquility. But what is spontaneous is
The feelings.
okay, let me explain this to you. Just imagine that you are a poet, right? And you lived a poetic experience that made you have a strong, powerful overflow of feelings, right? And you wanted to write poetry. If you sit directly and you write exactly how you felt, right? This is not called poetry, but it is called historization, right? That you are recording history of your own poetic experience, right? Why? Because you wrote directly without using your own imagination. What should you do? So you should wait till you calm down, till you calm, and you live a state of tranquility, of calmness. Then you use your imagination and try to remember how did you feel at the moment of the poetic experience. Then you start writing poetry. So this poetry will be the product of imagination and the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. It is not going to be history. It's not going to be history. Did you get it? Well, right. This what makes them different, right? So what we can say, right, that feelings are supposed to be spontaneous, but at the same time, poetry cannot be spontaneous. Why? Because it is recollected. It is recollected in a state of tranquility. Well, fine. So this is the meaning of the word recollection of ideas in tranquility, which is also one of the basics of what? Of Romanticism. That poetry is supposed to be recollected in tranquility. And I already explained this meaning. Then we come to the major function of poetry. I would like to remind you that we talked about the function of poetry according to Aristotle. And we said, what is the magic of function? It is to achieve catharsis through what? Generation of pity and fear, and through and through what? Through action, not narration. Yes, all right, now you remember. Through action, not narration, and through, right, pity and fear, right, catharsis can be achieved. Right. And to Plato, we said that poetry is not supposed, right, to reflect emotions, but it is supposed to, right, to help people to go out of the cave, to be intellectual, right? Now, along the history, many writers tried to say what is the function of poetry, what is the function, right? Some of them agreed with Aristotle. Some they said no, we are supposed to write poetry to teach. Some other people they said we have to write poetry to entertain. Some other people no, to both, to entertain and teach, to entertain and teach, right? So we had many functions through history, right, for the word poetry. But for the Romantics, they changed the whole thing, right? that they said that the major function of poetry is to quicken, right, and soften readers' sensibilities. So the most important word also, sensibilities, feelings, right? And what is the function of poetry? Is to make our own sensibilities, our own, right, emotional responses, quick, quicker, right, and softer, right? So to make the human being soft, tender, right, in his own feelings, right? So you have to look at that these people, they were really romantic. In a sense, all what they care about is emotions, feelings, right? So they write poetry to reflect their own feelings, powerful feelings. And what is this for? In order to make their feelings more quick and, right, softer and quicker. Softer and quicker, right? So, right, quicken to make it faster. And soften, it means to make them, right, more sensible, right? To soften and quicken the reader's sensibilities and their own sympathy. So they are no longer caring about catharsis. They are no longer caring about teaching or entertaining or going out of the cave. Who cares about this? Not the Romantics. All what they care about is to make human beings, right? Okay, to use their own feelings, natural feelings, to soften and quicken their own sensibilities and to increase their own sympathy, Well, when I think about it sometimes, I say that these people, they were trying to make a kind of a utopia in a real world, right? Because we still have many ideas, many things in life that doesn't soften, right, and quicken our own sensibilities. And it is not a function in itself. But what I'm saying that they were living in a world of their own, in which they want everything to be what? A human, full of emotions, feelings, and sympathy. Right, and it aims, this poetry also, it has an aim. What is that? Which is to cultivating the effective elements of the human nature. Right? Cultivating the effective elements of the human nature. What are the effective elements of the human nature? Right? His own nature. His own feelings. These are the effective elements of the human being. What is their function through writing poetry? Is to cultivate, right? To make them grow, right? To restore them. To be as natural as possible. Right? Do you understand the meaning of this one? So the function or the poetry, it has another aim. The first one, which is quicken and soften reader sensibilities. Another aim, which is cultivating the effective elements of human nature. What are the effective elements of human nature? It is his own feelings. It is his own nature, pure nature. What makes us a human? The effective elements is what makes us human. Because some people believe that we are no longer human beings, right? Or at least we are no longer natural human beings. So they want us to bring us back to our own nature, exactly like whom? Like Jean-Jacques Rousseau. We are going to stop here and we will continue next time, inshallah.